Hi there, friends. Welcome back to Lab at Home with the Museum of Life and Science. I'm Peregrine, and Catalyst volunteer Caroline is moderating for us today. As always, we hope you will all help lead our program with your questions and thoughts and ideas in the moderated chat box. Just one last thing. Today we are proud to be part of the Triangle Learning Day celebration. And I just wanted to say a special welcome to all our Triangle Learning Days friends. I'm going to go ahead and plop that link in the chat there. Check that out if you get a chance. There's a lot of really cool Triangle Learning Days programs out there. And this is going to be one of them. So today's experiment is called Biome in a Bottle. So I thought maybe we could start by defining some of those terms. Now, I'll admit I said both biome and bottle because they sound kind of cool together because of the alliteration. The container that we will use doesn't have to be a bottle. In fact, it might be easier if it's not a bottle, but we're just saying a bottle as in any kind of container. And we'll get to the specifics in just a minute. What do I mean when I say biome? What is a biome? Or if we don't know exactly what a biome is, what do you know that's related? What are some related ideas or related words? What do we think? What's a biome? Or maybe a word that means the same thing as biome or something similar? What do you think? Oh, okay, a habitat. Yeah. Oh, that's a very similar term. So habitat is similar to a biome. Anything else? When I look at the word biome, I think, right, bio, so I think life. So a biome is a type of ecosystem. An ecosystem is a combination of all of the living and non-living things in a certain area and how they all work together. And biome is a type of ecosystem. So there's different kinds of biomes in the world, right? There's desert biomes, there's tropical rainforest biomes, there's tundra biomes. So the biome is a type of ecosystem. We are going to be making our own type of kind of closed ecosystem, our own type of biome inside of a container. We're going to get it everything it needs in order to have it be self-sustaining, meaning that it will not need anything or it will need hardly anything from us in order to grow. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you what kind of stuff I have with me right now, all the different kind of materials we asked you to assemble. If you're doing the experiment along with us, definitely let me know what you have, because we asked you to get, especially like the natural materials. I would love to hear what you guys got. I'll tell you what I have. In order to make our biome, I have not exactly a bottle, but I do have a container with a lid. You can use any kind of clear container as long as it has a lid. Anything that is both clear and has a way to seal it off, because our biome, our ecosystem, is going to need to be sealed off from the rest of the world, the rest of the air anyway. So we need a container to put our ecosystem in. The next thing we need are some things to put inside of our ecosystem. So I have a couple things here. Some of them are biotic and some of them are abiotic. Do you know what that means if something is biotic or abiotic? What's the difference? They both have that word bio again, kind of like biome. What do we think? What's abiotic? What's biotic? So if something is biotic, that means that it has been alive before or is currently alive. So a living thing or a dead leaf is a biotic factor. An abiotic factor means not biotic. So it's not alive and it's never been alive. So something like a rock. A rock is not alive and it's never been alive. So it is something that we would consider an abiotic factor. So I've got a mix of different biotic and abiotic factors. I'll show them all to you that I have. So my jar is abiotic. I've also got some dirt I found this, I got this dirt outside of the butterfly house because I think they have the best dirt there. My dirt is a biotic factor. It's got things in it that used to be alive, and it's got probably some things in there that are alive. Maybe even some little invertebrates still living in there. If you have anything crawling around in your soil, that's probably going to be very useful for your terrarium, for our little ecosystem that we're going to make. So if you see a roly-poly or a little springtail in here, you should keep them there because they'll be helpful for what we're trying to do for our ecosystem. I've also got some more biotic factors. I've got some different kinds of moss. Now, I think moss is probably one of the easiest things to put inside of a terrarium because moss loves water. We're going to talk about why a water-loving plant would like it inside of our ecosystem in just a minute. But yeah, I got a couple different kinds of moss. I'll show them to you in a little bit more detail later. I've also got some, I've got another abiotic factor. I've got a plastic bag. I've got some scissors. I've got a thumbtack, just one of these little guys, little push pins. I said I've got a few abiotic factors like little rocks. Oh, I also found some snail shells. So these are very cool. I'm going to put these inside of, these would be biotic factors because they used to be part of a living thing. I've also got a little bit of kind of dried, almost like driftwood that I think looks very pretty. So I was thinking about maybe using that. I have got something to poke stuff with. So I've got like a chopstick here. I've also got a paintbrush just in case I need it. This is so that I can arrange things down into my jar if I can't reach my hand all the way in it. And if you're using something more like a bottle that has a smaller opening, then you want to be able to have something like this, especially so that you can put everything down where you need it to be. The last thing I have with me, well, I should say I have more than just a few rocks. I have a couple handfuls of rocks here. The last thing that I have is some water. Now, this water is dechlorinated. So that means that yesterday, I turned on the faucet and I got some water from the tap. And then I left it sitting out in this bowl overnight. What that did is that let all of the chlorine in here off gas. So chlorine is a chemical that we find in our tap water that keeps things like microorganisms and bacteria from growing in water. That's good for if we want to drink the water, right? Chlorine helps keep it clean for us to drink so there's no harmful bacteria in it. But if we're going to use it for our ecosystem, we want to keep those microorganisms or those bacteria alive. So we want there to be less chlorine. So I've just had water that's been sitting out for 24 hours. It is my dechlorinated water. So I've got a lot of different things. And what I'm going to do is kind of put them all together inside of my container, right? I'll show you how we will start. I'm going to go to my experiment can really quickly here. So here is experiment can. You can see all of the stuff I have all around me here. We'll kind of talk about each kind of layer as we go, but we do want to start it in layers. This is going to have a bunch of biotic and abiotic factors in it. It's also going to have some water in it, right? Something that's going to be really important for keeping plants alive inside of our little ecosystem is we want to make sure that we have a place for water to trickle down and gather without it being soaked into our dirt. So what we're going to do is we're going to create, it's called a false bottom. We're going to create a little reservoir, a little place where the water can gather at the bottom in such a way that it's not going to be touching our soil. If we had our soil be too soggy, then it would kind of start to grow like different kinds of bacteria that are not going to be super healthy for our terrarium, and it would kind of make things decompose or break down faster than we want. So the first thing we want to do to make our own terrarium or ecosystem is we want to make a false bottom of rocks. So I've got some rocks here, and I'm going to drop them into my jar. So hopefully it's not super loud. while I'm doing that, if you all did manage to find some different natural materials, I would love to hear about the different kinds that they are. I'm gonna drop them in. Make sure it's more or less flat here. And we don't need a whole lot. It doesn't have to be super tall, but we have maybe an inch or so of our rocks or pebbles or gravel or something at the bottom. And that's again, so when we put water inside of it, our water has a place to gather without touching our dirt. So we're gonna have one more thing between our rock layer and our dirt layer, which comes next. It's gonna be something that doesn't decompose, it doesn't break down, so it will kind of keep a really good barrier between where our water is and where our dirt is. So what I'm gonna do is I have my jar here, and I'm gonna take my plastic bag, and my plastic bag is going to be a layer between the dirt layer and the rock layer. Now, if I put this down into my container right now, no water would be able to get through it. And we want water to be able to pass down through into the different parts of our jar. So what we're gonna do is kind of create a mesh. So I'm taking my bag, I'm using my scissors to cut it in half. So there's just one layer, like this. All right, so I've got my one layer. There we go. And I'm going to poke a bunch of holes in it. And that's so that the water can trickle through here while not directly touching any of the soil, right? Any of my extra water. So I'm gonna do that by kind of resting it on my jar here. I'm gonna poke a bunch of holes in it with my thumbtack. If you're doing this along with me, you can poke just a bunch of holes in your plastic, like that. And we're going to use this as another barrier between our dirt and our rocks. While I'm poking some of this stuff, I want to go back to what exactly an ecosystem is in this case. When you're thinking about your ecosystem, right, kind of the world all around you, tell me about the kinds of things that you see. What kinds of things are in your ecosystem? What do you see when you look outside? We know that it's a mix of biotic and abiotic factors. Maybe you can even name some of the factors that are biotic and some that are abiotic. Oh, one of my friends says that there's trees outside. Very nice. So trees can be part of an ecosystem. What else? How about some dirt, right? We've been talking about like rocks and dirt. Oh, some flowers for sure. Flowers, trees, so different kinds of plants, grass, very nice. These are some great suggestions. Dirt is a part of our ecosystem. Different kinds of rocks are part of our ecosystem. The things that live in the ecosystem are part of it. So people are part of our ecosystem. All of the little bacteria that live in the soil are part of the ecosystem. All of the different animals that live around are part of the ecosystem. Everything works together inside of an ecosystem. And that's the same kind of environment that we want to create inside of our container. So what I've done is I've created this little barrier, right? I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. I want it to be about the size of the bottom of my container. It's okay if it's a little bit bigger, right? So I can see where the areas that I poked are. I'm going to cut around it a little bit with my scissors. So we're going to need to have water in our ecosystem. And because our drainage system in our container is not as good as nature's drainage system, we have to help it out a little bit, right? So we've helped it out by giving it a layer of rocks for the water to collect down here. Now we're going to keep that water from touching the dirt by putting in our layer of plastic, because that's something that will not decompose. I'm just looking for my chopstick so that I can poke it all down there. Perfect. All right, so now I'm going to add my dirt layer. I have got a bunch of dirt I said I got from outside of the butterfly house. It's got some sticks, it's got some leaves in it. That's okay, that's actually perfect, because if this soil is fairly loose, right, then that will help water to drain down it. It also will have things that can start to decompose inside of it. We've talked a little bit about things breaking down, things decomposing, things being maybe biodegradable. Do we know what that means? What does it mean for something to break down, to biodegrade? Oh, this is a great thought. We're thinking that when something decomposes, it's gone, it kind of goes away. Yeah, it definitely changes from its original form. Like if I have a leaf like this, when it fully decomposes, it won't be like a leaf anymore. All of the things that make up this leaf will have all broken down and become like part of the soil. So when something breaks down, different types of microorganisms, different kinds of bacterium, different kinds of maybe fungus help to break it down into its smaller component pieces. So we want things to decompose a little bit in our terrarium as well, in our environment. So we've got different things like pieces of dead leaves, little pieces of roots, little pieces of stick that will start to break down. Because since I got this dirt from outside, there's still plenty of bacteria in it. Definitely some of the kind of bacteria that will start to break things down. That's going to be a very important part of keeping our ecosystem alive. So I'm going to put this to the side a little bit right over here. We've got our rocks. We've got a little layer to separate the rocks from the soil. We've got a bunch of soil here. Now what I want to do is I want to kind of create a landscape on top. Just like in our environment, I want to put some plants in here. So the plants that I got are mostly mosses. And I'm going to get my dechlorinated water right here. And I'm going to kind of use it to dip my mosses in to make sure that they are nice and wet. Mosses are really beautiful, interesting kinds of plants that aren't like a lot of other kinds. They don't have stems and leaves, even though this does look a little bit like a stem. They're sort of different than other plants, right? A lot of times they're using spores rather than seeds to make more of themselves. I have a bunch of different kinds here. They all look different. They all have different components in them, and they really like moisture. I want to make sure that they have a good dose of water before they go in my ecosystem. We have a great comment from the chat. One of my friends was saying, it looks like grass. Yes, it totally looks like grass. This is one of the ways that some kinds of mosses reproduce. They make this little stalk here. See if it'll focus. There we go. They make these little stalks, and they have kind of these little spore parts on the top. And that's what helps create more moss. That's what helps the moss spread. So even though it looks a little bit like grass, it's different because it doesn't have seeds like grass does. Great observation. I want to put some of this stuff inside of my environment. Like I like this grass one that my friend mentioned before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dunk it in my water, make sure that it's nice and moist, nice and wet. And then I'm going to carefully kind of just drop it inside of my terrarium, my container. Now, when you're decorating yours, it can look however you want. I know that I'm trying to think about what the outside really looks like. So I'm trying to think, all right, there's plenty of green cover on the ground. I'm actually going to put it kind of right like that so you can see into it a little bit. So for our plants to survive, right, we said that they definitely need some water. What else do they need? What else do plants need in order to survive? What do you think? We've already said that plants definitely need some water. Do they need anything else? Are they good with just water? Oh, they need the sun. Great point, my friend. They need sunlight. Plants are really cool in that they can make their own food. They can use energy from the sun and use a chemical process called photosynthesis to turn water and energy from the sun and some nutrition from the soil into sugar for them to eat. They need one last thing in order to grow, and it's a certain gas. It's something that's kind of invisible to us, so we might not ordinarily think about it, but they need a certain gas, kind of like humans need a certain gas. Oh, my friend is saying they definitely need air, and they need a certain chemical in the air. Yes, exactly. They need a chemical in the air. They need carbon dioxide in the air. That's part of their chemical process that they need to make their own food. So we know that at the end of this process, right, once we've got all of our things in here, we're going to close it up. How will they get the carbon dioxide that they need in order to live? This is the question that I had when I first started kind of learning more about terrariums. I was thinking they're going to run out of air. Kind of like if you put anything alive that needed to breathe inside of a closed container, wouldn't it run out of air? It wouldn't be able to breathe. Something really amazing about our ecosystem and what makes it self-sustaining is this fact that it keeps all the regular processes of an ecosystem. Things not only grow and photosynthesize, they also decay and break down. When things decay and break down, they will release gases like carbon dioxide. So what's going on is the materials that are breaking down here are helping the plants grow. So they're kind of working together. That's what an ecosystem is all about. All right, I've got a bunch of plants in here. I want to put just a few more things to make it look interesting. I think maybe I'll put a little bit of this driftwood in here. That looks kind of cool. Maybe it looks kind of like a log in there. I was also thinking I have some nice pieces of quartz that I found outside. I'm going to put these in here. I just want to do something that looks interesting, that looks pleasing, like this. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to put a few more things in here, and then we'll figure out how to finish it up. There, what do you think? It looks kind of like a nice little garden in there. I'm going to put my snail shell in there as well. Maybe I'll move it around a little bit. There we go. I have one more snail shell somewhere around here. Oh, here it is. I'm going to put it right there. All right. That looks pretty nice in there. When things are growing in nature, they're all kind of growing on top of each other. There's biotic and abiotic factors all together, right? And that's all of the things that we have in here. We have biotic and abiotic factors. We know that the processes in our soil that start breaking down the dead materials in here will help give the chemical that our plants need in order to grow. We know that there will be some water that we need to put in here that will also help our plants to grow. And we know that sunlight will be able to come in and keep our plants growing and keep the whole process going. What I'm going to do now is I'm almost finished with my terrarium. What I'm going to do now is add some more water, right? I made sure that my plants were nice and wet when I put them in there. And I made sure that my soil was fairly moist, but I want to put a little bit more water in there. So I had it in a spray bottle, some more dechlorinated water, but I think I might just pour mine in. I want to pour a good amount of water in there because I want some water to be able to trickle through the soil and get down into my reservoir down here. So you might be able to see, yeah, I have a little bit of water trickling down in there. I know that I may have to experiment a little with the amount of water that my little ecosystem needs, right? I'll have to watch it and see if the water cycle is happening inside of the terrarium, right? If I take my lid and I cover it up like that, and I put this in some light. It likes bright light, but not direct sunlight. That can make it too hot inside of here. But it likes kind of bright sunlight. What happens is the plants will take that energy from the sun. They'll take some of the carbon dioxide and the water in here. They will make their own food. There will be different decomposing processes happening in the soil that will create more CO2. So there's already kind of a cycle happening. The water that gets used by the plants, right? The plants also give back. Plants do something called transpiration. Once they've finished using some of this water, they will pass it back out into the air, kind of like sweating, but for a plant. So they will transpire moisture into the air. And as the sun also starts to heat up our environment in here, it will cause the water to evaporate and turn into a gas form. Then, once the sun has gone down, or once it starts to hit our cooler glass wall, the water vapor will begin to condense. It's going to cool down, and that means that it'll condense on the side of our glass and drip down. Oh, it is exactly like my friend in the chat is saying. It's going to make a cloud. Exactly. In a way, we're going to kind of make it rain inside of our little ecosystem, right? Once it all goes into the air, and then once it cools down a little bit, it will all drip down, and the cycle starts over again. What we've done is we have created a really interesting cycle in here, and it's a cycle that should be able to keep itself going for quite some time. There are some people who have made terrariums that have lasted for years and years. I have a friend who has had a terrarium for over 10 years now. All he does is every couple of months, maybe he'll open up and add a little bit of water, or maybe if there's a puddle of water, he will take it away. But it was really amazing to me that it could last for 10 years with just a little bit of water here and there. I'm going to bring my face cam back. So I know that I'm going to take my terrarium here, my little ecosystem, and put it in a window where there is some light, but not too much direct sunlight. And I'm going to watch the different processes happen. If you're going to do this at home, I would encourage you to watch the way that the water cycle happens, the way that you start to see condensation or liquid water starting to drip down the sides. I would encourage you to look at the dirt and see if you see any small, if you see any little microorganisms in there, like maybe some little isopods or maybe some little springtails. I know that I had another terrarium that also started to grow some interesting colored bacterium on the sides. That was really interesting. I am also interested to see how my plants will grow. So that's another thing to keep an eye on here. There's a lot of different things to observe, just like in our actual larger ecosystem. It's just in a miniature version here. Thank you all so much for checking this out with me. I hope that you give this one a try. It's something that's super easy and just has so many different lessons to teach us. There's so much cool stuff in here. I hope that you can join us next week for Little Lab at Home. That's going to be a really fun one. So next week is Little Lab, and the week after that is Lab at Home. I hope that you can join us. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our Lab at Home regulars and to our new Triangle Learning Day friends. I had a really fun time with you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day. See you later, friends. I'm gonna go find a window for this guy.